Hello, everybody, and welcome. Yeah, so basically, this is a video that I'm just creating this morning because I just feel it's extremely important. I've actually created a video that is similar to this one before, but the gentleman that was supposed to help me edit it because I don't do video editing and things like that. Actually, this is the first time that I will be creating a video and trying to edit it myself. I spent a little bit of time yesterday night trying to find out, how I'm going to be editing these videos and putting them online because I just feel it's very important to talk about this, especially because of the votes that will be cast to at some point today by the MPs in Westminster. All right. Yes, as you can see from the name of this video, is called proposing a different Brexit solution that works. So yes, we're talking about something that is different from what Boris is currently proposed. Something that is different from what May is proposed. Is something that ensures that is a solution that ensures that the whole UK, i.e., the UK and in Northern Ireland, can go out of the customs union, go out of the single market, and it ensures that there's no border anywhere. You can order because because people might be thinking, what is that all about? But yes, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm an expert in these matters, but I used to be a logistics consultant myself. So in terms of all this trade, I understand it to a particular extent. There will still be people that will need to look into this to see, how the whole thing will work and things like that. I'm trying to keep this video as quick as possible. So what I will do is that I will just move through the points very quickly, load this video. There's going to be another version in the future that I'm going to create with some extra extracts from what other people have said and things like that. Now, the only thing that I want to happen is that this particular deal here, I want it to be called the Resurrection Sunday deal. Because obviously in that particular region, Northern Ireland is the Good Friday. And this one is like a last minute when people thought that there was no hope, it's like the Lord Jesus just resurrected from the grave. Same thing. It's like this deal is just resurrected out of nowhere. Yeah, so that's the name I wanted to be called by. Now, this video is going to talk about a few things. Yeah, it's going to talk about Boris's deal. It's going to talk about advanced free trade agreements. It's going to talk about no deal WTO, which is Farage's favorite deal. It's going to talk a little bit, or very quickly, about those different elements. However, if you want to just see the Resurrection Sunday deal that I'm proposing here, just skip to the end of this video. I've tried to, make it very simple so that people can understand it. This is Brexit simplified. Yeah, so skip to the end of the video and just watch that. And then if you want to come back and watch the rest of what I'm talking about, that's fine. But I know that this is very urgent. So just skip to the end of the video, watch that, and then come back and watch this one. All right. So the topics I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to be, talking about why we actually have to leave the EU. There's a lot of Remainers that are saying that, oh no, let's just remain, and so this topic of actually why we have to leave is something that needs to be discussed. Second thing I'm going to be talking about is the EU structures. I've actually made a video about this before. The different structures of the EU, but like I said, this guy that was supposed to help me to do the editing of the video went AWOL, so I'm going to see if I can actually edit that video and put it on later on. But today, I'm just going to quickly rush over them. I'm going to talk about what Brexit should achieve. um, what is the holy grail of Brexit? What are we looking into when we want to say, okay, this Brexit is the best Brexit for the UK? So the different things I'm going to talk about is the Advanced Free Trade Agreement. I'm going to talk about May's deal, which is obviously called the Withdrawal Agreement. No deal WTO Brexit, which is pretty much the one that is being pushed by Nigel Farage. I'm going to talk about the deal that is proposed by Boris, that is just being like, I mean, this deal is going to guard how we're going to trade with the EU and, for the next how many years. And it's just been like, boom, last minute, get it done. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think that this strategy is a bit risky. Then I'm going to talk about the Resurrection Sunday deal, which is the one that I am proposing in this video. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about going forward. In terms of going forward, I think I'll probably make another video about that in the future. But today I'm just going to be talking about a few critical points. Okay, so why leave? The first thing is that the UK is a democracy, so I mean, we're a democracy and there are autocracies out there. Even the EU is now being seen as an autocracy because of how the leaders are elected. But if we don't leave, what we are saying is that autocracies can actually come in and pay some of our MPs some money or whatever it is, talk to some of our MPs and just manipulate things, and then, our democracy doesn't really matter anymore. This is something that should never happen. We are a democracy and we believe in democracy. That means that when this kind of vote is cast, it must mean something. So we have to leave. We are not like a third world country somewhere where people will just come. You do an election or you do a vote or a referendum and then somebody just tries to cancel it. That just makes us look very weak, makes us look to the rest of the world that we call ourselves a democracy only when things are easy. But when things hit the fan, we take the democracy that we say we believe in and we throw it in the bin. We cannot be seen to be doing that. The second reason why I feel that we need to leave is that, what if the EU booted us out? You might say, why will the EU boot us out? But they tried to do the same thing with Greece. The Greece was going through a major crisis and they put it on the table. We'll send you out of the EU, we'll ruin your economy. So, I mean, the only kind of nation or the only kind of entity that should not be able to survive by itself, that needs to kind of like live on a host to survive, is a virus. We are not a virus nation. In fact, in terms of us, it's interesting. We are the smaller nation inside of a big entity called the EU, but it seems like it's the EU that is sucking us dry. So, I think that, like anything, when we feel like without this entity we cannot be prosperous, when we feel that without this entity we cannot survive, that is the time to leave. Because if somebody is saying, I'm taking this whiskey, but when the person gets to the point like that he feels without this whiskey I can't live and survive, that is an addiction. That is the time to leave. We should be able to be self-sufficient by ourselves. So the other thing that people need to know is EU versus WTO. We currently pay £1 billion every month to be in the EU. But what a lot of people don't know is that £1 billion that we are paying per month to be in the EU is to trade with 500 million people. Yeah? So 500 million people in the EU, we are paying £1 billion to trade every month. So 12 billion a year, let's just say. It's actually a bit more than that. But in terms of the WTO, we pay 17 million a year to trade with the WTO. Think about it. 1 year we paid 17 million to trade with the rest of the world, with the whole world. Actually, with the whole world, including the EU, we pay 17 million via the WTO to trade with the whole world, including the EU. but we are paying 1 billion every month just to trade with the EU. You know, a lot of people say, oh yeah, but it's just more than trade. But that's the problem. We only want the EU for trade. It was called the EEC, European Economic, European Economic Area. If you look at the WTO, these guys are solid. You know, I was going through their annual accounts the other day, and you know, everything that is WTO is trade, 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 trade. There's nothing about movement of people. There's nothing about taking over your country. There's nothing about taking over your taxes. There's nothing about that. This WTO is a solid organization, and they're just there for trade, global trade. So I will say that paying 70 million to trade with almost 3 billion or whatever, how many billion people are in the world, versus paying 1 billion every month to trade with just 500 million people. I mean, it's a no-brainer in terms of the numbers. The next reason why I feel we need to leave is because of the vision of the EU, and that is the key. If you want to know an organization or what the organization wants to achieve, look at the vision. Now, in my opinion, I think that the EU is actually a very good project. I think it's a fantastic project because, if it was just focusing on prosperity and development of its member nations, I mean, look at what the EU is achieving in Poland. If it was just saying, okay, this is the UK, how can we take the GDP of the UK from 2 trillion to 4 trillion? That nobody will want to leave the EU. But unfortunately, that is not the vision of the EU. It's not about the prosperity and the development of the member states. It's more about, I mean, from what we can see, it's more about subjugation of the member states. I actually see the EU, and let me say this, before Brexit, I never even thought about this, but just after Brexit, because even Brexit, most of the people that I know voted to remain. But after Brexit, you look at what the EU's vision is and what it's trying to achieve. I see it as a cloud, a cloud with a smile on it, yeah? And all the countries that are in the EU, all the 27, 28 member nations are connected to this cloud. And okay, initially the currency will be swallowed by the cloud. Then their taxes will be swallowed by the cloud. Then their army will be swallowed by the cloud. Before you know what's happening, this country doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that's exactly what happened to Greece. And when you look at what happened to Greece in terms in that time of when it was struggling, you will see that the intention of what the EU wants to do with member countries was just accelerated for Greece, and was accelerated for Greece. And we don't want to be, we as a nation, the United Kingdom, we don't want to be subjugated to anyone. We don't want somebody to entice us in with trade. And even now, all the remainers, all they talk about is trade, But we are thinking about our freedom. We are thinking about the freedom of our children. Do we want to be part of an entity that today will tell us, okay, it's about trade. Tomorrow we see a new treaty coming through the back door and then becoming something that now converts from ECC into the European Union. Now it's about how do we get an EU army and all those things. So, or how do we be the ones that are collecting the taxes? When a country cannot collect its own taxes, that country ceases to be a functional nation. Anyway, that's that. Another thing is that the Eurozone is currently in crisis. But before I even talk about that, it's worth mentioning that currently all the tariffs, and I say we collect tariffs because obviously we trade a lot with nations that are outside of the European Union. And the trade that we trade with those countries outside of the European Union are subject to tariffs. Many people don't know right now the multi-billions that we collect in tariffs are sent to the European Union. And the European Union just pay us a stipend, they pay us a little amount of money as a nation for helping them to collect those tariffs. When the EU has its own trading zone, the tariffs that will collect will belong to when the UK has its own trading area, trading union, like the customs union for the UK, then all the tariffs that we collect, all the billions that we collect in tariffs will belong to the UK, and then we'll be able to say what countries we want to trade with and free of charge without any tariffs and what countries we don't. Right now, the Eurozone is currently in crisis. Many people know that. I mean, if you go to France, go to Italy, go to Spain, and even now go to Germany, and and look at what's happening there. I still think that it's everything that you see there is done on purpose about this subjugation thing. When people are, low, and they're looking for a way out, usually that's when they're able to hand over their power to the higher entity. So Brexit is not really about immigration. A lot of people think it's just about immigration. They say, "Oh, you're racist. You're this because you voted Brexit." It's got nothing to do with. It's got very little to do with immigration. Yes, we need controlled immigration. It's important. You can just have the entire world come to live in this small little nation. I mean, there are favorable elements here. We have a very high minimum wage, which is more than many countries in the EU. Many people from the EU speak English, so if there's somewhere that they want to go to where they know that they can work the same amount of time but earn more so that they can be able to live a better life, where will they come to? They'll come to the UK. That's not a problem. It's a good thing, but it needs to be controlled. And the EU failed to provide a way of controlling this. And I think that's actually that's what triggered Brexit. But right now, Brexit is actually not really about immigration. It's about something way bigger than that. The next thing is that Brexit is not about trade. Actually, trade is why we joined the EU in the first place. I see a lot of Remainers saying that, oh, we're trading with our biggest partners, we're losing the biggest trading zone in the world. That's all doesn't make any sense. I can have 500 million people in a company, that trade with me. If only one of those people is buying from me, those 500 million people are irrelevant. In a minute, we're going to look at the trade figures with the EU and with the rest of the world. But to be honest, if it was just about trade, there will be no Brexit. If the EU was just about trade, there will be no Brexit. So the reason why people are leaving, and the Remainers just need to stop talking about trade all the time, and they need to talk about the real issues that Brexiteers are worried about if they really want to have a say in this argument. So it's not really about trade. Brexit is about what the EU is becoming, or what we are perceiving the EU to be becoming. We are seeing the EU, like I said before, it's like we're seeing it to be an entity that wants to subjugate all the nations that are inside it, by becoming a political or a superpower of its own. So like United States of Europe, where each entity, instead of being its own individual nation, becomes a state. Now there's only one Remainer that I've ever heard that has actually said something that made me think, maybe, because she was just explaining what the different EU structures do and how we are feeling that it's subjugating, but it's not trying to subjugate. If the Remainers argued from that perspective, I think the Brexiteers will listen. But right now, all they're talking about is trade, or trade with your biggest partners. Why would you want to leave trade with your biggest partners? And look, if the EU is about subjugation, we want no part of it. If it was about prosperity and development, there will be no Brexit. But we don't see that. What we see is army, taxes going to the EU. We see laws being passed by the EU. We see the EU courts being bigger than the UK courts. We see even this Supreme Court that we have. We see they're working for the EU. We don't want this kind of subjugation. And that's why we feel that leaving is quite important. Okay. Let's move on now. Let's talk about the EU structures. Like I said, I've talked about this in other videos before. I'm just going to quickly go through this very quickly. um, these different structures of the EU. So customs union, I think, like, to put it very simply, customs union controls not trade within the EU, but trade outside of the EU. So in terms of the EU schedules with trade outside of the EU. What that means is that if we have a free trade agreement with a particular nation, fine. If we don't have a free trade agreement with a particular nation, then tariffs will be charged. Like, for example, when we trade with America right now, tariffs are charged, and those tariffs, like I said, are passed directly to the EU. We have no way of keeping these tariffs in the UK. So when you hear customs union, those people saying customs union, it's all about trade outside of the EU. Yeah, trade with Oman, Saudi Arabia, things like that. It's based on EU schedules. So the EU determines um, what taxes or tariffs what tariffs should be charged. EU determines the standards of those products, things like that. When we talk about single market, that's talking about trade inside the EU. Okay, so obviously that also controls things like the free movement of people, free movement of capital, free movement of goods, and free movement of services. So they want if people moving from Romania to the United Kingdom and from the United Kingdom to Greece, so there's that single market controls that. So obviously, if people are worried about immigration, then the single market is what they need to be thinking about. If people are thinking about free trade with the rest of the world, or better trade with the rest of the world, then the customs union is what they need to be thinking about. Now, the other elements of the EU, which you probably need to do a quick research by yourself: European Court of Justice, European Commission, European Parliament. These people are just lawmakers in terms of money and if you're the things that take place in the EU. So when you're thinking about laws that control us, there's a lot of laws that are actually passed down from the EU to the UK. I don't even think they read it; they just sign it off, and it goes in. It's a bit dangerous because we don't know what is in those laws. But yes, so this elements here, they control the laws. Then there's the European Central Bank. They control the money, obviously the euro. Now it's very important for me. It was a little bit scary when I saw when Greece was in their crisis and how the money of Greece was just controlled, and I was a bit worried about that. I was a bit worried about that. I would not want people or an outside entity to have that level of control over our money. That is a bit dangerous. And obviously the Agricultural and Fisheries Council. We are the United Kingdom. We're surrounded by water. Yeah, but there's some other nations like France that are able to fish in more parts of our water than we do. There are quotas that these individuals create. So if a fisherman goes beyond that quota, yeah, then every other fish he catches, he has to throw back into the water. I don't really see the point of that. It's our waters. But hey, that's what the Agricultural and Fisheries Council control. In my opinion, for us to leave the EU, we need to be out of all these different elements for us to have a real Brexit. What does that mean? Free movement of people, free trade EU goods, free trade capital and services. So free movement of people, that needs to be stopped because we need to control immigration, like I said before. Free trade EU goods, we want that really. We want to have a free trade EU goods. So that's yes. Free trade capital and services, we want that. We want to be able to trade with other nations, which means we need to be out of the EU customs union. We want full control over agriculture and fishing limits. So we have to be out of the Agriculture and Fisheries Council. We don't want to be part of that euro, so that's fine. We're not part of it currently anyway. The backstop is not something that we want to be a part of. Laws from the EU, we don't want it. So, and as long as we're not taking the laws from the EU, we don't need to be in the EU. We don't need to be at the table. We don't need to have MEPs in the European Union. So the money to the EU, I would prefer to not pay it or maybe just pay very little of it. Obviously, payments of this 1 billion per month, that just needs to stop. It's just too much money for what we're getting from the EU. It's just way too much money. So if we're able to achieve this, that's the best Brexit. Okay, if we're able to get out of all the EU structures, and also be able to do our trade, but get out of everything else apart from trade, bravo, that is great. That's what Brexit is really supposed to achieve. Okay. All right, let's move on. Now let's look at the Advanced Free Trade Agreement. Let's see what it does. So let's look at Ireland and the European Union. The Ireland and the European Union are, Ireland is part of the European Union, the rest of the European Union, yeah? With the Advanced Free Trade, so this is now the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. So what the Advanced Free Trade Agreement in green does is that it enables free trade between the UK and the rest of the EU. So free trade within the, although you see the UK and Northern Ireland is in green, but there's still, this AFTA controls free trade with the blue parts, yeah? And when it comes to the rest of the world, here on this side, because we are not in the customs union and the single market, we can trade with the rest of the world. So trade with the EU will be based on the AFTA. Trade with the rest of the world, that will be based on WTO and UK schedules. So there will be people that will have free trade agreements with. Maybe even the European Union will have, because the AFTA will have the free trade agreement with the European Union. You know, that is the, in my opinion, that is the holy grail. Now, you can see with the AFTA, we are out of all the EU structures, but we have our trading deal. We don't have a free movement of people because we are out of the single market, and all these other things, we are out of them. So, like I said, the Advanced Free Trade Agreement is the holy grail, which we seek. It's actually the Brexit that we want. Now, it's important to actually say that when we initially went, when we initially had the referendum and Brexit won, Tusk actually proposed an advanced free trade agreement, but it was Theresa May that rejected it. She rejected this because she said she wanted a close partnership with the EU. Now, I do not know why she did that. There's a video about it online. If you want to go and look at that video, fine. But in the subsequent version of this video that I'm making, I will add that video back in. Yeah, so just to mention that. This is something that was actually proposed to us before. This holy grail. Brexit will have been so simple, straightforward, take the Advanced Free Trade Agreement, and that will have been the end of it. But Theresa May said, no, I don't understand it. Anyway, let's move on. So let's look at May's deal. May's deal keeps the whole of the UK, Northern Ireland, inside the customs union, the single market. Everything continues the way it is for the transition period, which is supposed to last until 2020. Yeah, so there will be no change. The uncertainty will still be there. We will still be inside the EU until 2020, and that's what we're paying that 39 billion for. Can you imagine that? But then after 2020, the entire UK will be in the customs union. So customs union, like we said before, we still will not be able to trade with other nations. But obviously, because we're in the customs union, we'll be able to trade under EU schedules. That's not really Brexit at all, to be honest. And then obviously Ireland will be in the single market, so Ireland will still be having free movement of people, free, all these other things that are in that single market that we don't want. And obviously the reason why she kept Ireland in the single market was that she didn't want a border here between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Yeah, so that's why she kept Ireland still in the single market. But obviously, we will not be able to trade with even though when it comes to trade with the European Union, that includes Ireland, no problem, we can do that because we're in the we're in the customs union, and we'll also keep our trade. Actually, thinking about it, because we're in the customs union, but we're not in the single market, so there actually could be tariffs. But I'm sure she wants to create something that will ensure that there will be no tariffs between that trade. Um, and then when it comes to trade with the rest of the world, that will be impossible because we're going to be in the customs union pretty much forever. So I don't really see the advantage that this gives us. It gives us no advantage whatsoever because all the great things that we can achieve by trading with the rest of the world, this has cut it off from us. So she's focusing too much on the European Union, but what she needs to understand is that the UK voted to leave the European Union. And then obviously, although there's no border here between Northern Ireland and Ireland, there will be a border here because the single market operates here. It doesn't, except she puts in a kind of like a different trade deal that takes care of that, or she waits for the advanced free trade deal, the other slide that we looked at, to kick in. But in terms of this particular deal, customs union, we're all in it. So single market, we're all in it. The European Court of Justice, things like that, we're not in it. The European Central Bank, obviously, we don't have the euro. We're not in that. But in terms of the Agriculture and Fisheries Council, I think we're still in it, but I'm not very sure. There probably needs to be question marks there. But in terms of the free movement of people, yes, there will still be free movement of people as far as Northern Ireland is concerned, and based on whatever internal deal she has with the EU, I'm sure it will still contain free movement of people. Free trade EU goods, yes, that's what she's trying to achieve. Free trade capital and services, I would say that would also be yes. Own trade with other countries, no, because we're still in the customs union. They will still be able to impose their agriculture and fishing limits on us. There's a backstop, which is the problem. Now, the backstop is something that is very weird. It's that thing that I said there in terms of Ireland being in the single single market. Basically, what they're saying, what the backstop is saying, is that solution will be there until a different solution is found for Ireland and Northern Ireland, which might never happen. So if it never happens, that solution will be what will be there forever. We will not be able to trade with other nations. 27 other countries will need to agree to let us go. Even if we find a solution, they will just keep saying it's not good enough. You find a solution, it's not good enough. You keep paying your 1 billion. Why would somebody that is collecting 1 billion from you every month let you go? I don't really get it. So that backstop is a terrible thing, and the MPs were very good to vote this deal down because of that. Because I think we're still going to be in the ECJ. So although I put no here, it's actually no to the MPs being on. Although I put no here, it's actually no to MPs being. So voice at the table is no to MPs being in the parliament, MEPs, sorry, being in the parliament, but we still get the laws because we're under the customs union and the single market. So we still get the laws from. So we have laws passed to us that we have no veto over. That's terrible. That's subjugation. And then obviously money to the EU, 39 billion for the transition period. 39 billion, not 39 million, 39 billion. That 39 billion needs to be spent on our military or internal trade possibilities within the UK, but that's just me. And then we'll still be paying that 1 billion per month as long as we don't have a solution for NI and Ireland. That 1 billion per month will still be going. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a BNO, a Brexit in name only. This is not Brexit at all. This is a terrible, 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 terrible deal. Anyway, let's move on. So then there comes Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, let's look at his solution, which is the no deal. Nigel Farage is the one that is really pushing it. Now, I think that, when you see Nigel Farage, he gets a little bit frustrated as to why people are not backing no deal, or why people are demonizing no deal. Like, it's going to be the end of the world. But I think the reason why people are doing that is because the people that are selling no deal, they're not selling it properly. In my opinion, I think that no deal is actually the fastest way to a free trade agreement, the holy grail that I showed you before. Because when no deal happens, people will come to the table very, very quickly. All this transition period, all these other things that they're talking about, it's just going to cause delay, it's going to cause changes, it's going to cause uncertainty, it's going to cause the waste, it's going to affect the nation, it's going to affect the economy. We just need to put a line in the sand with this thing. And that's where no deal comes in. I like no deal very much because when you look at no deal in my opinion is the fastest route to an advanced free trade agreement. Anyway, so let's look at it. So with the no deal, the whole of UK, including Northern Ireland, GB and Northern Ireland, comes out of the customs union, the single market, and all other EU structures immediately. So there's no period of extension, there's no deal period, there's nothing like that. Immediately we come out, okay? And then once we're out, we join the WTO, World Trade Organization, and then with the WTO, we're able to trade with the rest of the world. But obviously now there will be tariffs between goods that will be between the goods that we're buying from the European Union. So there will be tariffs between goods from Ireland, and there will be tariffs between the European Union. But the trade with the rest of the world will be based on UK schedules according to WTO. According to WTO, there could even be a period where there are no tariffs between the EU and the UK, but the EU and the UK need to agree to that. So that would be fantastic. So instead of paying them 39 billion, we just use the WTO exit strategy to make sure that for a period of time, without the 39 billion, we still have a free trade with the European Union. But we will be able to start building our own deals with other nations in the world in that time. Now, obviously, like I said before, I think that the reason why no deal is very, very good, and I think that this is what people are not pushing, this is what people don't understand, is that no deal is the fastest route to an advanced free trade agreement. So somebody might say, why will the EU be rushing to give the UK an advanced free trade agreement? That's what a lot of people will say. Why? Why should the EU give us an advanced free trade agreement where, we are now not paying the 1 billion a month anymore, we're not paying 39 billion, but yet we are enjoying free trade with the EU? Why should the EU do that? That's the question that a lot of people keep asking. And the answer to that is simple: trade. That's the answer. Trade. In trade, the customer is king. End of story. Not the manufacturer, not the supplier, not the logistics company. The customer is king. If the customer is not placing orders, nothing happens at the manufacturing side. And luckily for us as a nation, the UK is the biggest customer of the European Union. It's the biggest customer of the European Union. So let's look at the trade that happens between the EU. Let's look at this. Okay, so there's 614 billion pounds worth of trade that goes on between the UK and the EU. So are you telling me that, first of all, this nation loses 39 billion, they lose 12 billion a year, and they will lose 614 billion in trade because they want to put tariffs? Look, I would love to see that happen, but there's no way that is going to happen. There is no nation on the earth that is doing 614 billion. If it was maybe like Poland or these other nations where they don't really buy that much from the EU, I think maybe it might be okay. But 614 billion worth of trade, you can't put tariffs on that. That will be death. That will be self-suicide. It's not going to happen. They're going to give an advanced free trade agreement. End of story. But then look at the other things that you can see here. 67 billion in deficit is what we have with the EU, which pretty much means that the EU is just dumping all their stuff on us. You know, they're selling 341 billion to us every year, and then they're buying 273 billion. We have a 67 billion pound trade deficit with the EU. Why are we trading? Why are we paying 1 billion a year just to have a 67 billion pound deficit with this nation? When you have a deficit, that means they need you more than you need them, because you are the one buying from them. Yeah? Why should we be paying 1 billion every year every month for the advantage of them sending 67 billion? You know, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. Now, if you look at trade that we have with the rest of the world, you can see that the trade that we have with the rest of the world is equal or even more than the trade that we have with the EU. Guys, let's understand here that the rest of the world, there's almost like 3 billion people. There's only 500 million in the EU, but we have so much of this trade that is coming from the rest of the world is based on tariffs. I mean, look at the United States alone. Yeah, 41 billion trade surplus with the United States. Yeah. So what are we talking about here? Why are we acting like we are the ones that need these individuals? Okay, fair enough. We ship 273 billion to them every year. So fine, we probably need them, but they ship 341 billion to us. So if a tariff is levied there, who does it affect? The one that is shipping 273 billion or the one that is shipping 341 billion? Guys, believe me, if we go on a no-deal Brexit, before the sun sets, there will be a free trade agreement on the table. This is just basic numbers. Now, I'll come back to this chart in a bit, especially when I start talking about Ireland, which is the basis of the solution that I'm proposing. But I'll come back to this chart in a bit. All right, let's go back to the thing here. So yeah, obviously, what I'm saying here that an advanced free trade agreement will be very quick, based on a no-deal Brexit. Obviously, with the advanced free trade agreement, there will now be no tariffs between the trade between the UK and Ireland and the rest of the EU, which means there's no borders, there's no Good Friday Agreement problems, all these things go away. But in my opinion, this is the fastest route to get there. A little bit of pain maybe for a week or two. I would say a week or two. I wouldn't even go beyond that. A little bit of pain for a week or two, you get your free trade agreement, life goes on. All right, so no deal fire, just look at that. All the EU structures, we get out of all the EU structures with no deal. But obviously, when it comes to the trade, initially, free trade with the EU goods, obviously, it's going to be tariffs on that, so that's a problem. Free trade in capital and services, there will be tariffs on there, that's a problem. But it is Brexit. It's a fantastic Brexit. We are out of all the EU structures. However, when we get the advanced free trade agreement, when it comes to those two things, it becomes yes. So we've got to this is the quickest route, in my opinion, to an advanced free trade agreement, which is the holy grail of Brexit. Yeah? Now let's look at the Boris deal now. Before I go into the Boris deal, what I would say is everybody needs to go and do their own research, because I am not a Boris. This Boris deal is so quick. Many people don't understand it. I don't understand it in its entirety, but I'll try my best to just talk about what I understand that it's doing. Okay, so the Boris deal also has this this period of time, like the May's deal, because it's like a copy of the May's deal with a few changes. It's got this period of time where we are still part of the European Union until December 2020. So everything still happens as it is today, with UK and Northern Ireland still being still looking like they're part of the EU, still functioning in that way. In terms of the time limits, I'm not sure of what changes immediately, because some people have been saying that some things actually change immediately. I would say that you will need to research that yourself, because I am not really familiar with what changes immediately with this deal. In terms of, sorry about this chart here, this picture has got white all around it. In terms of what happens December 2020, Great Britain and Northern Ireland will leave the customs union, from what I understand. So Great Britain and Northern Ireland leaves the customs union, so everything changes. From December 2020, we'll be able to start trading with other nations. But Northern Ireland remains in the single market because they don't want any border there. So that single market makes Northern Ireland feel like they're still part of the EU. There's still free movement of people, free movement of goods and things like that. But in my opinion, I don't even see why Ireland would accept this, because as far as Ireland is concerned, what they really want is not to trade with Northern Ireland, which is okay, which is good. What they really want is to be able to trade with the whole UK. So I don't really see. I think that the only reason why Ireland will accept it is because they have something in their back pocket regarding this this period where, till December 2020, there's maybe some tricks that they have in their back pocket, because because Ireland, I can't see them letting the UK just go. You can have tariffs with the goods that you sell to the UK from Ireland. The trade is just way too much. The people of Ireland would not accept that. Anyway, let's move on. So obviously, because of the single market and, to be honest, Ireland is pretty much being sold away here. Because if you think about it, there's not going to be a border between one part of the country and the other part of the country. What is that all about? I don't know. But anyway, we'll be able to trade with the EU, and there will be tariffs on our trade with the EU. If the goods go from the EU to the UK, there will be tariffs. If the goods go from the EU to Northern Ireland, single market rules should apply, so there should be no tariffs. In my opinion, there should be tariffs because Northern Ireland is part of the UK. But you see, this deal is a weird deal. And then if goods flow from the European Union to Ireland, there will be obviously no tariffs there because it's part of the EU. Goods flow from the UK to the rest of the world, it will be based on UK schedules. So if we have a deal with this country, then it'll probably be tariff free. If we don't have a deal with this country, there'll probably be tariffs incurred. Yeah. But the idea is that eventually, if a free trade agreement will come into play, that will then mean that these old structures will now vanish. I mean, I don't understand. It sounds like, I mean, if the backstop is not there, then those structures should vanish and everything should be replaced with the free trade agreement. But nobody's talking about that. It seems to me like this whole situation with the Northern Ireland being in this weird thing vetoed every 4 years. I think it's something that looks like it's going to be there for a while. There's going to be a false border here, but for some reason, this single market thing that they're doing should take that border away. But the Northern Ireland is still in this customs union thing, so in the UK's customs area. So I don't see why there will not be a border there between Northern Ireland and Ireland. So that's why they're calling it the two-border solution. The only thing that I can see is that the UK will be able to trade with the rest of the world, which is fantastic, but that will not be until 2020. This is a very weird deal, in my opinion, but a lot of people are saying that it gives them the AFTA, Advanced Free Trade Agreement, in the long run, but I don't really see it as being as swift as the no deal in bringing this end solution. So in my opinion, I still think Nigel Farage still has the best solution so far. I mean, I'm going to be talking about the Resurrection Sunday agreement or Resurrection Sunday deal in a minute, but I still think that free trade agreement, if what we want to get to is an advanced free trade agreement, It's either we get that now or we get a free trade agreement that takes us to it very quickly. This whole thing here will just result in years of, I don't know. So obviously with the advanced free trade agreement, then the trade with the EU now becomes free as well. And I think that these structures with Northern Ireland, people need to research that. Do those structures then vanish, replaced by the advanced free trade agreement? That is the big question. All right, so Boris deal, let's take a look at it. The EU structures. Customs Union, no, but it seems like yesterday, it seems like Boris, that would have been good actually, but Boris made some concessions yesterday. And now it seems like Northern Ireland is still part of the EU's customs union, which I don't know why Boris would do that, but I'm sure he has his reasons. Single market, no, but obviously Northern Ireland is part of the whole thing. In terms of the European Court of Justice, I would say that all this will be yes until 2020. I think 2020, all this will then become no's. Agriculture and Fisheries Council, I'm not sure, so that's why I put, I mean, you can do your own research regarding that. In terms of the other things, you know, if you look at this, this is just not nice. Own trade with other country, yes, but that will be 2020. Free trade, capital and services, 2020. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. Yeah, so yeah, is it Brexit? Yes, it is Brexit. It is Brexit because it is Brexit, but it's Brexit that throws away part of the United Kingdom. Why would we want to give up a part of our nation to another country? You know, it's Brexit that gives a lot of uncertainty, a lot of issues with the Boris deal. Is that Northern Ireland, especially the DUP, will have a veto. The Northern Ireland Assembly will have a veto every 4 years, like I said before. Many people don't like that. Those two borders that are going to be there, it's a problem. Obviously, the main border that goes between NI and Ireland, they're saying that they're going to make it so that you don't actually see a physical infrastructure. We'll see. Now, the problem that I have is that if this deal needs to be there, I don't see why that delay till the end of 2020 is needed. I think it's something that needs to be implemented immediately. A deal needs to be implemented as quickly as possible so that we can get rid of any uncertainty, get to the end as quickly as possible, and just move on with what we are doing. So surrendering of NI and some people are saying that there will be like taxes on imports to NI from the UK. That's just crazy. Why would they want to do that? But like I said, I don't really fully understand it. Will I vote for Boris's deal? I think I would say no. I don't think I'll vote for this deal. It's too confusing. I think that the no deal is a much better route to the AFTA. The only reason why I would want to vote for this deal, if at all I do, is to understand what happens to NI, Northern Ireland, after we get a free trade agreement with the EU. If this deal did not have that 2020, if this deal was something that was initiated and done next week instead of waiting till the end of 2020, and then we have something that says, well, this is what happens to Northern Ireland after an advanced free trade deal is accepted, then I think I would probably be inclined to vote for it. But then, if it was sure, if what will happen to Northern Ireland was sure after 2020, then why is that veto there? There's something about it that is very weird, in my opinion. Yeah, but that's how I see Boris's deal anyway. Now let's look at the solution that I'm proposing, which is the Resurrection Sunday agreement. Resurrection Sunday, I like that. So there's two parts of this agreement. This is going to be the first part that I'm going to be talking about. Now let's look at the European Union and Ireland in one place. In terms of this agreement, the entire UK actually goes out of customs union and goes out of the single market. The difference between this agreement and, let me say it this way before I actually say that, the deal that Boris has and the deal that Theresa May has are the only two deals possible in terms of jurisdiction and regions. The only problem that I can see with them is that currently they are facing the EU. They are trying to use the EU structures, and that's the problem. The Resurrection Sunday Agreement turns away from the EU and faces Ireland, and that's why it works. Okay? Ireland is the key, in my opinion, to having a good agreement here going forward. Anyway, so Northern Ireland and Great Britain get out of the customs union. Northern Ireland and Great Britain get out of the single market. Order! Everybody calm down. Out of the single market gets out of the customs union. Okay? So, what does that mean? When we trade with the European Union, there are tariffs on our trade with the European Union. People don't like that, but it is what it is. There are tariffs on our trade with the European Union. Yeah? So when we trade with Ireland, there's tariffs. Everybody's going to be up in their chairs when they see this, but it is what it is. But then, what we are proposing in the solution one is that trade between, so not the whole of the European Union now, just Ireland, just Ireland and Northern Ireland is subject to another agreement, which is the Resurrection Sunday Agreement. So the UK is out of the customs union, the UK is out of the single market, but a section of the UK, which is Ireland, is with this Resurrection Sunday Agreement. A section of the EU, which is Ireland, is with this Resurrection Sunday Agreement. Yeah? So it's a new agreement, and as far as I'm concerned, if the entire single market agreement is copied into this, but it doesn't affect any other European Union member state apart from the EU, that's fine, in my opinion. Obviously, I will imagine that there will be some things that will be removed from it. But in my opinion, there's so many people in Ireland that work in Northern Ireland, and so many people in Northern Ireland that work in Ireland. I would say that it should even include free movement of people from Ireland. So it's not a free trade agreement. I would call it a free movement agreement, because it should concern trade or key elements of trade, and it should also concern people and a few other things as well. So, based on this this Resurrection Sunday Agreement, yeah, that I'm proposing, trade from the Northern Ireland to Ireland is free. Trade from Ireland to Northern Ireland is free. So what then happens when, like I said before, the Resurrection Sunday Free Movement Agreement 1 is just a copy of, it can be a copy of the single market treaty or whatever that the EU has, and just remove whatever they don't want from it in terms of their trade with each other. And there you go. Yeah, so that's that. And that's what the Resurrection Sunday Agreement is. But it's not the single market agreement. It's a new agreement that sits up on top of that, where a part of the UK allows its elements to trade with Ireland based on this thing, and a part of the EU allows its element to trade with part of this thing. What does that mean? Because there's free trade between Ireland and Northern Ireland, then there will be no need for a border between the two countries. Okay, now let's look deep into this. So trade with the rest of the world is based on UK schedules. Yeah. Trade with the EU is tariff based. Trade with Ireland, between Ireland and the rest of the EU, obviously, is free movement, single market. Trade between Ireland and Northern Ireland is free movement based not based on the single market, but based on this new RS agreement. It's very simple. Now, the important thing to say here is that obviously people would then be saying that there will be a border, because obviously when goods are coming from the UK to Ireland, then there will need to be They'll be free, actually. There shouldn't be a border because it's customs union here. But if the country of origin is the UK, country of destination is Northern Ireland, then it should be free. Country of origin is the UK, country of destination is Ireland, then it should be tariffed. Yeah? Does that make sense? However, also, if the country of origin is the UK, but it says that it's going to Northern Ireland, but we know, or there are ways of checking that it's actually bound for Ireland, it's just something that these guys are using to smuggle, then those are the kind of things that need to be checked. And it's also vice versa. There's some things that will be going into Ireland, but it's actually meant for the UK, but they're just using Ireland as an initial thing. So yeah, like I said, this thing here will be there before a free trade agreement is agreed anyway. So there's no reason why this will not work. In my opinion, the United Kingdom, or should I say, the whole of the United Kingdom should still keep to EU standards because we've been in the EU standards for so long. Even with this RS agreement here, the more the UK keeps to the EU standards, the easier it will be to just have this movement of goods between the EU and the UK. Like I said, with this, tariffs will be based from the UK to any EU states, including Ireland. Tariffs will exist. The only situation where tariffs will not exist is when tariffs or checks or things like that will not exist, is when goods are moving from Ireland from Northern Ireland to Ireland and vice versa, goods and people. So GB imports should still be based on EU standards as far as possible, or we should have a way of labeling EU standard products from non-EU standard products so that we're able to keep an eye on the ones that don't meet EU regulations. So EU imports, non-EU standards, maybe just have a way of labeling the two. Origin country, destination country will be used to say, okay, will this be tariffed or be tariff free? If something is going to Ireland, even though it's going from Germany, it's going to Ireland, the destination country is Ireland, that should still not incur a tariff because obviously we're just allowing it to pass through the United Kingdom to get to Ireland and vice versa. I think that this will work. It's a Brexit deal. So let's look at it. Customs union, single market, blah, blah, blah. We're out of it all. Free movement of people, only Ireland, but that free movement of people is between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Free trade EU goods, only Ireland and Northern Ireland. Obviously, we want free trade with everybody. So again, a quick advanced free trade agreement based on the need for trade between these two nations. It's not just the UK that needs the EU. Look at the trade figures. The EU needs the UK more because the UK has a trade deficit. So an advanced free trade agreement works very well for all. 39 billion, I would say no need to pay that 39 billion. I would say we implement this immediately and just get out of there. Maybe just pay a little bit of the 39 billion for a little bit of time to be able to get the RS Resurrection Sundry Agreement in place and then just leave and let that Resurrection Sundry Agreement be what is taking care and making sure that that border stays open. So that is the first version of the of this Resurrection Sundry Agreement that I'm proposing. It's a Brexit. It works. No problem. The second version that I'm proposing is where, again, EU and Ireland are part of the customs union single market. They're pretty much the same, under the same entity. Great Britain gets out of customs union single market and all other EU structures. Tariffs exist between Great Britain, Northern Ireland, as well as between us, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. Tariffs exist. The Resurrection Sundry Agreement obviously enables free movement of goods between these two, Northern Ireland and Ireland, so that there's no border, free movements of people, free movement of goods and things like that. But what this one is about, this one is more similar to May's deal because it also covers goods going from Great Britain not to the EU, no, just to Ireland. So unlike Boris's deal, that is very breakup centric of Great Britain and Ireland and Northern Ireland, this one is very I think that the future should be more about integration of Great Britain and Ireland. That is what the future should be. It should be about Great Britain and Ireland working together. We are stronger together. We buy so much cheese, we buy so much agricultural products, we buy so much clothing products from Ireland. You can see from this thing here that we actually have a trade surplus with Ireland, 12 billion. Apart from America, the next people that we do the biggest trade with, or that we have the biggest trade surplus with, is Ireland. So in my opinion, I say that this is Ireland focused. So this Resurrection Sunday agreement, takes us out of EU, but enables us to have an agreement with a section of the EU and ensures that the Ireland is actually still in the EU. Yeah? So that's what the Resurrection Sunday agreement is all about. All right, so again, we can copy all the information from the current single market document, copy it to this Resurrection Sunday agreement, take out the things that we don't want, discuss the things that we don't want, and take them out of that agreement. When it comes to a border, there should be even this border here should not exist because of the free trade with Ireland. Not a free trade with the EU, just a free trade with Ireland. That's it. We only want a free trade with Ireland. And that's what this Resurrection Sunday agreement covers. Now, obviously, when it comes to trade with the rest of the world, that will be based on UK schedules or free ports, where we decide the countries that we want to have a free trade agreement with. And obviously, we also want to have a free trade agreement with the EU. So if we get one quickly, so be it, no more tariffs with the EU. But in my opinion, as long as we have this Resurrection Sunday free movement agreement with Ireland, we're fine. We don't need to have anything with the EU. We don't need to have any trade deal with the EU. We can leave immediately. We don't need to be waiting until December 2020. We can remove all that uncertainty. We just have a document that guards and deals with our trade with Ireland. And if the EU can support that agreement to be in place for the sake of the Good Friday agreement being kept, then I think that Ireland can enjoy being in the European Union, but Ireland can still enjoy free trade with the UK. And that's it. Really takes care of everything. Now, so the tariffs will still be there. Resurrection Sunday agreement will also be in the UK. We'll be able to trade with the rest of the world immediately. We'll have the tariffs with the EU, but that's not up to us. That's up to the EU. When they want to agree a free trade agreement, the tariffs go away, and everybody just moves on. Yeah, I think this is the best deal. This is the best deal. This is what everybody should be voting for. Now, let's move on. What's next here? What's happening? Okay, so Resurrection Sunday agreement. Let me go back one. All right, so question. Are there any borders? So borders vanish. So the borders have vanished, which is good. Sorry. Free movement between there, free movement with the UK based on this deal. GB imports, again, EU standard. Make sure that what is coming from the rest of the world to the United Kingdom is based on EU standards. And what is coming from the rest of the world, although it's coming to the United Kingdom, but we know that it's going to Ireland, we can still act on it. Goods coming from the EU will be tariffed. We need to just monitor the standards of goods coming from the rest of the world. And we need to be able to label and differentiate the goods coming from the rest of the world that are EU standard from non-EU standard, or just keep it to EU standards as we currently have it, and then and then just make sure that all the goods that are coming in and out just have a very good origination country and destination country on them, so that things can be properly monitored without the need of a border. So we don't need a trade agreement with the whole of the EU. We just need a trade agreement, this Resurrection Sunday agreement with Ireland. That's it. All right. So again, no need for a board, no need for customs checks there, because obviously the agreement is free trade with Ireland. So there's no need. So people will say, okay, why can't things just go to Ireland, and then from Ireland go to the rest of the EU, or why can't things go to Ireland, and then from Ireland go to the rest of the UK? Things like that. Yeah. So this is why we need to just have a way of monitoring the items that are coming and where they're really going. So if an item comes to the UK, but we know that this item came last week and it went to Ireland, it came this week, it's going to Ireland, then next week we stop it from going to Ireland without, we stop it from going. But I don't really see why though, because if it's coming from the rest of the world to the UK and then ending up in Ireland, so that it can be shipped from Ireland tariff-free to the EU. I don't know why. I don't know why people would want to do that. So it's kind of like smuggling. I guess these are the different things that they need to talk about, so that there's a way they need to put active monitoring ways in there, so that goods that are coming in here. Because if I'm going to the UK, there's a line that says UK citizens. There's a line that says non-UK citizens. Yeah. So you can say this particular thing is one that are coming to the UK that meet EU regulations. These are the ones that are coming to the UK that don't meet EU regulations. When they come to the UK, they are UK goods. So if they stay in the UK and then they go through a manufacturing process, and then from that manufacturing process they go to Ireland, that is a UK good that is going to Ireland. So I don't really think there should be a problem there. But again, this is something that the nation will be able to talk about, decide for themselves and things like that. All right, so RS Agreement 2, let's take a look at that. We are out of all European Union structures, so it's a Brexit. Let's look at that. Free movement of people, no, except all. Actually, ignore this. All, even Ireland, free movement of people is only with Ireland. Okay, that's fine. Free trade EU goods only with Ireland, not the rest of the EU. The rest of the EU is going to have tariffs on them. Free trade capital and services only with Ireland. The rest of the EU has tariffs on them. Money to the EU again, just a little bit of money until this agreement can be fully put in place. 1 billion a month, no. So pretty much we're out of, it's a Brexit. We're out of the European Union. Now, let's compare this to the Boris deal. Again, Boris deal, research it yourself. No borders, so this two-border thing is gone. Veto, no need for veto. Why? Because the reason for a veto is because of a lack of change. It's the single market agreement serves 27 nations. So how can that document be changed? It's going to be almost impossible for that document to be changed, because you need 27 different nations to agree it. However, the Resurrection Sunday agreement, because it only deals with Ireland, it's going to be easy to change. And because it's easy to change, if the two parties don't like something, they just make that change on that document. They make that change on that agreement. They don't need anybody else to veto it. European Union says we're happy with this change. UK says we're happy with that change. Make that change. No need for veto. 2020, no need for that. This is something that can be implemented immediately, and or maybe after a few months, just to put the Resurrection Sunday agreement in place. Surrender Northern Ireland to the EU, no need for that, because Northern Ireland and the UK will be totally out of the EU, customs union and single market. Trade with other countries will be possible immediately. We can trade with America. We can trade with with other nations, and things like that. So I think that this is a very great solution. It just means that in the future, United Kingdom will just have a great relationship with Ireland over and above what we have with the EU, which is the right way to go, in my opinion. We are so connected as nations that trade between us should be free, even if we don't trade with the rest of the European Union. Okay, that is the Resurrection Sunday Agreement, folks. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys like it. Hope it goes in on time before this vote goes in. I'm cutting the wire here. Like I said, I don't do videos. This is my first video. I just feel it's so important because it's something I've been thinking about. And I think it's something that would if people can see that there's another way, it might affect what's it called, their votes and things like that in the parliament. Anyway, trade. So basically, going forward, this is just talking about so once we've left the European Union, a lot of people say, "Oh, what next? What next?" I think that the most important thing after we leave the European Union is going to be about trade, global trade. I mean, I listened to the Queen's speech and I listened to what Boris was saying. He was talking about Wi-Fi, broadband, and all that stuff. Look at China. The important thing is not all this stuff. The important thing is we need to have a singular, fixed vision. We can't be having, oh, we are doing this, we're doing that. Yeah, broadband is good, NHS is good, very important. We need to put some money towards the NHS, that is very important. We need to have police on our streets, very important. But the singular vision that we need to have is global trade. We've got 50 years of missing out on global trade, national development of people within the nation. That is what our vision needs to be going forward. So the vision should be really focused on moving the GDP of the United Kingdom from 2 trillion to 6 trillion. People will laugh. They will say it's impossible. Yes, it's a vision. Look at China. Nobody would have thought it was possible for China to move their GDP from 1 trillion to 17 trillion. Look at, they're laughing today because of that ability to move, within how many years? 10 years? 15 years? 17 trillion. They did the impossible because they had a singular vision of improving the productivity of the nation. We can do it as well. I mean, we are not an autocracy, but if they can go from 1 trillion to 17 trillion in so short a time, why are we saying we can't do it? That needs to be the singular most important vision of us as a nation. The second thing is we need to empower the lower level of society. There are different structures that are in place. I've actually already put something in place regarding training development, based training, social training enterprises, where people work and learn at the same time. So different ways of empowering lower levels of society. But I will say that one of the things that I keep hearing people say is about, oh, we need to increase minimum wage. We need to increase minimum wage. A lot of these things I don't understand why we wanted to increase minimum wage so much. I think what needs to happen is we need to think more of a way of controlling COL, which is the cost of living, especially rent. If rent can be controlled, for two reasons. First is that people on benefits, the government pays their rent. People that own their houses, the government doesn't pay their mortgage. The government pays their rent. Number two, if rent is low and rent is controlled, then minimum wage doesn't need to go up, because the wage that somebody earns, most people earn, the biggest part of that, the biggest expense of that wage goes to rent. And also, if rent is controlled, means less people will want to buy. It controls so much. I think that rent needs to be controlled in a way going forward. If we can find a way of controlling rent, we can control house prices, we can control, minimum wage doesn't need to be so high, efficiency and productivity of the nation can be more of these small businesses will be able to employ people, or have a different tire where this particular type of company can employ in this way, that particular type of company can employ in that way so that more people are employed, paying into the economy. Anyway, so that's that. Obviously, we also need to empower high levels of society. I mean, when you look at America, you have to be a little bit impressed with companies like Amazon, companies like Facebook, that just have. I mean, compare them with China. I mean, it's a different way of improving productivity. Really, having a system in place where so many people need to use that system and so many people get enriched by that system, and then that system also enriches the nation, so I think higher levels of society, people that are very highly educated, maybe with higher roles, probably also need to be trained on how they can improve their productivity and things like that. Uh, so when it comes to looking outside of the United Kingdom, looking externally, we're thinking of things like free ports, the Commonwealth. If we want to keep minimum wage high, then we need to look at how we can manufacture elsewhere. So the demand, the supply needs to come from somewhere. And in my opinion, I think the Commonwealth, especially solid countries within the Commonwealth, needs to be something that we look at. And look at the relationship with America as well. I mean, if you look at our current trade, look at our highest trading partner outside of the European Union is America. So let's compare what we buy from America to what we buy from Germany, which is our next highest. Look at that. Look at that. So basically, Germany, we export 56 billion to Germany. We export over double of that to America, 112 billion, and this is with a tariff. We have a 21 billion pound deficit with Germany. That means they're just making stuff and just shipping it to us day and night. And we have a 41 billion pound surplus with America. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And these guys, the technology, we both speak English, two nations that speak English. We're both democracies. We are the biggest trading partners of each other. So I think our relationship with America needs to be stronger. If there was a free trade deal with America, obviously the NHS not on the table and other things like that, I think that would be very good. Would I want to travel into the EU where I don't really speak the language? I mean, I have to be confessed, I am a professional, and I've had so many. I mean, I speak French. I used to live in in France. And but the thing is that my French is not perfect anymore because I haven't been there for a while. And I got this interview in France, and they were like, "Oh, your French is not fluent." Of course, it's not fluent. The EU, they haven't put something in place that stops discrimination based on language. They haven't put that thing in place. But hey, it is what it is. But America, that problem doesn't exist. If there's a job in America, a British person should be able to just quickly, if we have a good trading relationship with each other, we should be able to, an American person should be able to easily get a job in the UK, a British person should be able to easily get a job in America, things like that. I think that will really work for both of us. But also, a lot of these things that these guys are saying, Boris is saying, we need this, we need that, we need to invest in the military. I think since we've been in the EU, one thing that a lot of people have been saying is that our military has really weakened. I don't really see it because we've been a superpower, we've been a strong force for many, many, many years. So in terms of strategy, giants, they've fallen before and they can fall again. So people should be under no illusion. But I still think that work needs to be done in terms of strengthening the military, and this needs to be immediate. This needs to be done very quickly. So that's the end of this presentation. The Resurrection Sunday Agreement. It just brings a different way of looking at the whole Brexit situation, and hopefully it helps us as a nation. Thank you. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, just get in touch with me via this channel, and put your comments on. Let me let me know what you think. I hope it helps. I hope we're able to put this in very quickly. All right, thank you guys very much. Bye bye.